Domo arigato, geek to me radio, da 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 da. Domo arigato, geek to me radio, da 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 da.
Welcome, geeks and nerds, girls and boys, to a brand new episode of Geek to Me Radio. Tonight, we have Freddie Wiedman on. Sorry, I've already screwed up. Freddie Wiedman on, talking about the brand new Batman Cape Crusader. He did all the music for that series. We're going to talk with him about that. In studio, we've got three-time Eisner Award-winning artist Rick Burchett to help us break down the series. Joining us soon should be Peter Jessup, one of the voice actors from the series. All that and more. Stand by.
Comics and movies and video games. And if you don't know Star Trek from Star Wars, we'll try to explain. There are 12 doctors for Hogwarts houses, one ring rules them all. To be the greatest Pokemon master, you must catch them all. You must catch them all. Try to catch them all. Gotta catch them all. Gotta catch them all.
For those of you driving around the greater St. Louis area tonight, listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS, hello to all of you. If you are listening to us on the KTRS app or on the website, we appreciate you there. And if you're watching us on YouTube and on Facebook, hello to all of you out there who might be joining us with video. We appreciate you doing that. And as always, if you're hearing us after the fact in the podcast version, we appreciate you finding us on whatever platform you download your podcast from and listening to us there as well. If you haven't already done so, make sure you leave a 5-star review for the show. That always helps us out on Yelp. Is it Yelp, Joey? It's Yelp, right? Yelp. We'll say Yelp. But it always helps us out regardless, so we do appreciate that. I'm your host, James Enstall, bringing you the show live every Sunday night. Very excited about this show because I'm a huge Batman fan. Anyone who knows me knows what a big Batman fan I am. So when they announced they're going to do a brand new Batman series that Bruce Timm is behind it, I was immediately all in, ready for this series. And so I'm so excited to have this show to break it down. My guest joining us via remote is Freddie Wiedman, I'll say it right that time, joining us, who did all the music. And you might, if you heard that name, you're like, why do I know that name? He's done a bunch of DC animated projects, and he just got the Emmy for season 3 of Star Trek Picard. Very excited to have you. Freddie, thanks very much for joining the show tonight.
Oh, I'm very honored to be here. Just want to point out real quick, we did actually not win the Emmy for music for Star Trek, but almost.
Oh, you were nominated though, yes?
No, we didn't even get a nomination for music. You know, it was just so many other great projects. But the Emmy I have that you see here is from an older show called All Hail King Julian.
Well,
but,
you should have won an Emmy for Picard. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Thank you. We all think that, yeah.
All right, so I'm down 2 strikes. For those of you keeping track at home, it's the Skinny Geek Kid is down by 2 going into the first half. So we'll see. I've got the name wrong. I got the project wrong. That's okay. We'll keep up.
Okay.
Joining us in studio is Rick Burchett as well. All the Batman art you've done over your career. I'm excited to have you because you and I talked on the phone and you were so excited about this project as well.
Oh, yeah. It's what I figured out as I was watching it, and it sucks you in and it just carries you along. I figured out that this is the Batman I always wanted to see in movies. Mm-hmm. This was my Batman. And God, it's great. It is so good.
Yeah. And I can only imagine Freddie working on this. I mean, when you think of music of Batman, you think of Tim Burton, you think of Shirley Walker, and then later, obviously, Lolita Manis and Michael McHuston and Chris Carter and everything, all these people who've done Batman scores over the years. So when you come, well, first of all, how did you get the gig? Did you have to audition, or did they like all their stuff you've done? Like, hey, you've worked with DC and Warner Brothers before, let's bring in Freddie. What was the process like getting attached?
First of all, I just want to say what your colleague just said, that this is the Batman that he wants to see. That's music to our ears, because that's exactly what we were hoping to evoke, that people will say, this is the kind of Batman that I'm here for. And so I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah. So in terms of how I got involved in this, it took a while. I helped them out halfway through the process with some music needs, way before they were close to doing anything real with scoring. And then a year went by and I didn't really know what had happened to this project. But then they reached out and they said they would like me and I think it was 6 or 7 other composers to score a scene, and then they will make a decision based on that. And that's a very typical process for Warner Brothers and other studios too. It's kind of how it goes. You don't really agonize too much over it. It's just like, all right, I guess I'm part of the pool. What's nice is that they already had a pre-selected group of people to do this with. Sometimes it's what I call a cattle call, where you don't even know how many people are sending stuff in. So this was kind of more tailored, which was great. And then when I saw the footage and got sort of the brief on what they were looking for, I mean, it just made so much sense to do this noir 1940s, early Bernard Herrmann-esque detective score. It was just that's what this needed. And it's something that I really hadn't done ever. I've done my DC stuff, but it was always pretty modern and contemporary and big and, heroic music, but this wasn't that. So it was really exciting for me to figure out, like, how do I do that with this language of music? And I just kind of spent, I think it was 2 weeks of just conceptualizing ideas, and then I ended up writing some stuff, and I ended up finding something that I thought was really on the money, and luckily that ended up getting me the gig, and it kind of set the tone of what we were doing. But I have to say, like, I was still probably holding back a little bit of the 40s sensibilities in my demo. And there's a multitude of reasons for that, but which I can get into a little later. But they did push me further into it as we actually started to scoring the show. And I'm so glad they did, because that's clearly what this show really wanted to be and to sound like.
There's such a stark contrast that I noticed in the opening music versus Batman the Animated Series, which obviously that's the comparison people are going to make, is this and Batman the Animated Series, because we were just talking, Joey has just revisited, my executive producer Joey V just revisited Batman Mask of the Phantasm over the weekend, and he was talking about how that iconic that score is. And I know, Rick, you said something to me about the opening. What were your impressions of it?
Yeah, it was perfect, to be honest. How much did they give you on the opening theme? Did they give you storyboards? Did they give you anything to work from, or did you just go at it?
So the opening was a big question mark for all of us, because we didn't know what it's going to be. There was no visuals. There was really not much in terms of an idea that existed at the time, and we were just spitballing ideas. Bruce Timm and James Tucker and I. My initial idea was, okay, so we're doing a spiritual successor of Batman the Animated Series, so it's got to be something like that. So that was my first take on it. And it was just music. There was no visuals. I just wrote a theme. And Bruce was like, yeah, I like it. Save it for later. But let's take a completely different approach. And I was like, ooh, do tell. What are you thinking? And then he kind of went more deeply into, okay, what if it's slow and noir and just this sort of this subtle build of a theme with slow moving images, no Batman kicking ass, jumping on buildings, just really, almost like hypnotic. And I was like, okay, that's an interesting idea. And we talked about other references. Like, I think you brought up Penny Dreadful as a good example of an opening credit sequence, in terms of the mood. And, I was nervous as hell, because now you're taking something that people love so dearly and making a complete 180 on it. So I was sitting in my studio and physically sweating, because I was like, I don't know how I can do service to the fans. I really love this idea and I think it can work, but boy, this is gonna probably hit some resistance on this one. So, but we went for it, and I think after I had composed the music and the producers were all happy with it, that's when they started to put images to it. So it was kind of a reverse project. Sometimes you get some stuff in advance, and since you asked in terms of what I had to go by, and it was really just a verbal idea and a concept, and then the images came later, and we really didn't change the music beyond this. It was like, here's the piece, they all liked it, and then the images evolved over it, and it was done. And I'm so glad we did, because I was nerve-wracking when this piece came out, because I saw Matt Reeves posting it on Twitter, like I think a few days before the show's launch, and I was like, okay, here we go. And I stayed off Twitter all day. I was like, I can't go down there and read the comments and like the pitchforks and whatnot, because people are gonna react to this, because it's different, Like, if you're doing a Batman show that is, a different Batman show than anything else, you're much more open to new ideas and fresher takes on it. But since we're kind of doing this spiritual successor of the most iconic, greatest, GOAT of Batman shows, in my opinion, and probably most people's opinion, it's really tough to deviate from what they've done. But it ended up being a really, I would call it a success because most people really dug it and they understood why we're doing this, because the big reason was Batman isn't a superhero yet. We're kind of we're starting from the beginning, more or less, before he becomes the Batman that we know from comic books and certain other movies, where he's already the certified villain in the cities. People know who he is and they're happy when he shows up and saves the day. But in our case, that's not true. When he shows up, people are scared. The music is really ominous when he shows up and hangs the guy over the train tracks.
Yeah.
It's scary music. It's like, Jesus, what is he going to do with this guy? And that's the sensibility we wanted to give Batman. Dark, brooding, kind of a little bit of a scary persona. And that's what the main title was supposed to do. And I think people got that. I mean, from what I've been reading, they were like, yeah, I get it. This is not Batman yet. This is Batman the detective, Batman the obscure figure in the shadows of Gotham, scaring people more than helping them, And as you see the show, you understand that that's how Batman is portrayed in this. And he's also quite violent, he gets down to it. So I think the music justifies this approach. And yeah, anyway, that's the story of that. It was probably next to one of those particular Star Trek cues, one of the most nerve-wracking things I had ever composed. But, it's at the same time, it's the more stressful, the more rewarding at the same time.
Sure. Yeah, we've got
a
listener, Shannon, one of our friends who listens, asked if the music's the first thing to set the tone, or does the music come afterwards? What is the protocol, or or does it work parallel with each other? I think as far as the opening, you addressed that, but throughout the show, like when you're doing different themes, did you get drawings what the characters would look like? Did you get the backgrounds and everything like that for the majority of the music?
I mean, I get the full locked episode to compose to.
Okay.
So I have the whole thing. I have every cut. The animation was practically done. I think there's a few retakes, that they do when they fix things that were pending, things like that. But it's all cosmetic stuff that I would almost not even notice if they make any changes to certain things. It's subtle stuff like certain feet movements or whatever. But it's basically all there. So I'm just looking at the cut, and then we have an extensive spotting session with the producers, and they guide me through their vision and what they want the story to do and what the music should do to help the story at certain times. It's called a spotting session. We go through the whole thing. And, to rewind for a second, before anything happens in episode 1, we do need to spend time nailing down the sound of the show. And this often happens with just scenes. And, like I said earlier, there was a demo process where I scored a scene, like a 3-minute bit, before anything else happened. And that kind of started the conversation. But from that, there was a lot more going into the direction of 1940s and even 1930s early film scores that we wanted to push this. And episode 1, we had a little bit more time for, which was nice because we could actually spend the time to nail that down, because I kept sort of slowly pushing it furthermore into modern territory, musically speaking. But then they pushed me back. No. This is too much. This is too Hans Zimmer. No, Hans Zimmer. Like, go back to Bernard Herrmann. Go back to Max Steiner and Korngold and all those fantastic composers from that era. And it was great because we really found it in that first episode. And from that point on, it's just you're off to the races because TV schedules work rather rapidly. So you're just on, on a 2-week rotation, episode after episode. And at that point, you need to know what you're doing. You need to have your key themes established. And then you just score the episode, to the cut. My software allows me to watch it while I compose the music, and it's in sync and easy to make changes if there are any that need to be made. So and then it goes to the orchestrator, and then it goes to the orchestra.
That was going to be one of my questions too, as I know, obviously, we were just talking with Susan Eisenberg and how they would do these huge, vast orchestras. And I was going to ask, was this something that was done with a full orchestra like Warner Brothers used to do, or was it mostly computer generated for the sounds and the orchestration?
No, it's sort of in between. I know what you're talking about, and I wish we were back in the golden days where they would record everything live with, Looney Tunes and all that in Los Angeles with the best people, and would have been amazing. But we had some budget constraints, as it is nowadays, especially in the streaming world. But we were lucky and very privileged to have the budget to record strings and all the woodwinds and even some brass in some instances. For every single episode. And it's a very unique thing. I do a lot of animation, and it doesn't often happen that you get that luxury. So it was nice that they were able to come up with that, because when you're trying to do this original 1940s sound, you really need that. It just doesn't sound good from a computer generated orchestra. You can't can't get there. It just sounds stupid, quite frankly. I mean, I did it. I've done the demos, and I showed it to them. I was like, guys, and they're like, yeah, let's do it. So it was a no-brainer. And then we had a wonderful orchestra in Eastern Europe, in Macedonia. They nailed it. Every single episode, really, top-notch performances. And then we mixed it in LA, and just came out great. I'm really happy with how it sounds in the end, and I think it's as solid and good sounding and live sounding as it can be. I mean, I got emails of people saying, "Wow, which orchestra was this?" Like they didn't notice. And even if there was like that one occasional MIDI instrument that snuck in there to cover something that no one noticed too much. So that's good.
Yeah, and I know Rick, you'd said the music was one of the first things that really you noticed of the series.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was one of the things that kind of put the cap on the whole show. The music was so perfect throughout the entire thing. I'm kind of a movie and TV soundtrack nut. I mean, I have been for a long time, and this was, you can tell when there's care being taken with the soundtrack, with the music, and it has to complement the whole series. And this did. I mean, this was just, I couldn't believe it. It was just so good.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to hear that. It's definitely, it's just like as much of a passion project as Star Trek is, really, because it's Batman, and it's tied in with such an iconic other show, which I grew up watching, and I'm absolutely in love with. It's like, to me, it's the quintessential Batman, like, way of portraying Batman.
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah, I love the noir style, because that's another thing that caught me was the original Batman the Animated Series was you held the Art Deco look, and the dark background was obviously supposed to kind of be set in older time, but then they had cell phones and things like that. This was all like old school radios, and they didn't have cell phones. And I love the part that Batman gives Renee Montoya his phone number, and Alfred has to patch him through on the switchboard, which was so cool to see. And it was, he throws the batarang, and it's a metal blade, basically. It knocks the guns out of people's hands. So
and the kind of guns they use
fancy.
too, right?
Yeah.
The special, like, Al Capone, like, mafia guns.
Yeah, and it really looked like it was the whole aesthetic of the way it was done, would just felt very Maltese Falcon.
And
well, it's kind of like this: go bold or go home. Like, you either do it fully and commit to it, or you don't. And this was kind of the idea. So, if all the way down to the music, we're committing to making this a period piece on that. And it's great. I love that people dug it, because a challenging thing for me was there's not a whole lot of superhero material in old 1930s scores.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't much to draw from. Like, when you go back in history and you go, okay, what can I listen to that could inspire me? And there's really not much. I was even given some references, like, oh, you should watch the Mystery of the Wax Museum. That's a great suspense. And I'm like, okay, great, I'll watch it. And the whole thing, 0 score, none. This is just because this is what they did back then in movies. They didn't often have music. The whole thing is dry. But nevertheless, it educated me on so much about the suspense aesthetics, camera movements, and how they're doing the builds to the scary moments, which is a lot of what they've done in our show. But so the challenge for me was, like, how do I take the language from 1940s and 1930s film scores, but somehow still make it feel like it's a Batman score?
Right.
Because none of that really ever existed in that sense. So the closest cousin to what we were doing is probably early Bernard Herrmann scores, like Hangover Square and Citizen Kane, things like that. Okay. That's sort of the detective, moody, noir vibe that seemed to work well in terms of how harmonies are used in the orchestra. And that was, I think, the biggest thing I held on to in terms of an inspiration point and in tone. But yeah, that's, it's hard. If you do, like, we're doing like a Gone with the Wind movie, and it's got to sound like the old one. It's like easy. There's a whole score I can listen to and be inspired by. But this didn't really there was no real Batman version back then that could potentially do that for me. So I had to sort of figure it out.
I really hadn't thought about it in those terms either. That's interesting to think of, because I remember, obviously, we have the old Superman serials and the Batman serials and everything like that, but I never really...
They're kind of bombastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and cartoony. I mean, anything cartoon back then was cartoony. They didn't do dramas. They didn't treat animation like a dark feature film like we do today.
Yeah, quite a bit different.
Because it was cartoons for kids. That was
right.
basically what they were made for.
So were comic books back then too. That was all for
same
kids
thing.
too. Who knew? We've got other people in the chats I've been neglecting. I'm so sorry. Our friend Chance from Atlanta, the nostalgic pod blast. Hello, Chance. BK from Cartersville, Georgia, listening in. All these Georgia people, and we're from St. Louis. I kind of like that we're big in Georgia, I guess. And Dan Reba out there on the West Coast. Dan Reba says the music was incredible and so refreshingly different from the older show. I love the original sound, but has its own identity. Great job coming from Dan Reba.
Thank
who
you.
Knows Batman as well.
Yeah.
Music to my ears. Thank you.
We're going to take a real quick commercial break while we're at a pausing point here. So let me do that real quick. If you're listening right now, you can send us a chat on the KTRS text lines at 84126. Or if you're in the chats on YouTube and Facebook, just type your chat right there, and hopefully I'll try to notice and pay attention. And if you've got a question for Freddie Wiedman or for Rick Burchett, who's also in studio, we're waiting. Peter Jessup should hopefully be joining us soon. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS. Please stand by.
To the TV. What next? You're trying to find a crown, but it's real easy to get lost. So don't be surprised if the dragon finds you first. Holy cats, you just killed the dragon. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it.
Advanced Dungeons & Dragons video game cartridge and Intellivision master component from Mattel Electronics, each sold separately.
Poor little pound puppies. They had no one to love them. Pound puppy, you were sad and lonely. Brought you home, now you're my one and only. Pound puppy, you're my one and only puppy love.
Pound puppies are so cuddly soft, they feel real. Each sold separately. You can name them.
Fetch, Coco.
And for a few dollars more, send for a name tag, stickers, and owner's certificate.
Pound puppy, you're my one and only puppy love.
From Tonka.
Spengler, this lab is spooky. Bankman, nip ahead. It's full speed ahead. What an eyeful. Let's split. Great car. Yikes, it's Highway Hunter.
The real Ghostbusters, each sold separately.
Careful, Janine, this airport's haunted. Wow, great plane.
To Geek to Me Radio.
Ever since Kevin Conroy passed away, I've been playing his return liner every single show. It's never more appropriate than when we're talking about Batman. Big shoes to fill, but we're talking with the composer, Freddie Wiedman, about Batman Cape Crusader. We've got Rick Burchett in studio with us as well, waiting on Peter Jessup, who should hopefully be joining us soon. I'm your host, James Enstell. Before we get back into it, I'll make sure we tell you about our premier sponsor, of course, the Greater St. Charles Convention and Visitors Bureau. They just had Picture Day down there. They're getting all ready for Legends and Lanterns coming up in October, the last 3 weeks of October. It's a huge Halloween festival. If you're a Halloween fan like me, you really need to plan to go down and visit Old St. Charles right there along Main Street. It'll suddenly become inhabited by Martian invaders. It'll have Lizzie Borden. It'll give axe-swinging lessons. You can brew a cauldron with the weird sisters from Macbeth. You can learn how to ride a horse from Ichabod Crane, and you can sing karaoke with the Phantom of the Opera, all there along Main Street. It's a great time. If you're a Halloween fan, that's the place you want to be. Last 3 weekends of October, you can add that to your calendar. Christmas Traditions, the biggest and longest-running Christmas festival in the country, celebrates its 50th season this year, also in St. Charles. So if you are one of those weird people who like Christmas better than Halloween, okay. But that'll be a good place for you to visit, of course. Will be downtown St. Charles starting the day after Thanksgiving, running all the way through Christmas Eve. International Santas from around the world. They've got all sorts of cool things. They'll have different events that are going on, too, on certain nights. So you'll want to pay attention to the calendar. You can do all that at the website, discoverstcharles.com. They've also got Hit the Bricks tours, which I thought I had all my stuff in front of me, but you can go down there if you want to learn more about the history of St. Charles. Go down to the visitor center and you can do their Hit the Bricks tour. So they'll take you up and down Main Street with a person who knows their stuff, learn all about George Washington slept here, Lewis and Clark ate there. After they ate, Lewis vomited right over there. They'll tell you all the history you really want to know about St. Charles. It's a really fun time, and that happens all the time. You just go down to the visitor center, sign up for one of the tours right there. Check out the website because they've always got something going on, whether it's one of these festivals, whether it's a food truck day in Frontier Park, whether it's a big race they had going on right there along Riverside, or if you just want to get out of the house, go for a bike ride on Katy Trail, whatever it might be, start your trip at the website, discoverstcharles.com. That website again, discoverstcharles.com. As we always say, it's an historically good time. Chatting with my guests here, we were talking Batman Cape Crusader, which hopefully you've seen it by now. I kind of pushed this off till the end of August to give all you people enough time to watch it. Because I know some people were like, well, I'm waiting. I want to make sure I can check this out because there's a lot of streaming stuff out there, a lot of shows. But this is one I was so excited about. And talking a little bit about the show itself, there's stuff I loved about it, but there's stuff I was kind of hesitant on. But it was the vibe of it all, the old school vibe, the original kind of noir-esque aspect, kind of a focus on detective. One of the things I loved that I didn't expect to was the introduction of Harley Quinn without the Joker. I thought that was really well done. And Rick, as a story person, did you enjoy that aspect of it?
The entire show. I kind of knew some things going into it because of my sources, but for the most part, I loved the whole thing. I love the way because let's face it, if you're going to do another Batman show, you've got to go big.
Yeah.
You've got to change things. You've got to change it up, and you're going to upset some people. There's no question. Yeah. But you've got to change it up, or else there's no reason to do it.
Yeah.
Unless you do more episodes of Batman the Animated Series, which, there's plenty of those to go around. Or else you can do, Batman Beyond, which when you're talking about Terry McGinnis's son or whatever.
Right.
So if you're going to do Batman, you're going to have to change things up, and you're going to have to, the viewer's going to have to accept that things are going to be different. And it's like my old boss, Denny O'Neil, said, Batman can be done in 100 different ways, and they're all right. So, people are just they're either going to have to get, used to it or go back and watch the old episodes of Batman, the Animated Series. But the changes they made, some of them were pretty wild. The Penguin was unexpected. But it's the changes they made, I think, were really, really bold, and they were really interesting. Yeah. I mean, if you're just going to change all the villains to women, it's like, you don't want to do that. You're going to have to come up with interesting changes to make the whole program interesting, because, that's the key to Batman, are the villains. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because the villains are the color to the show. Batman is black and white. Even if the show's in color, Batman is black and white. Yeah. And so to put some color in there, to put some excitement as far as interest goes, it's the villains that you got to work on.
Yeah.
I just love the whole thing. It just pulled me in and kept me there.
With having a change up in some of the stuff, obviously there's always themes for certain characters and everything like that. The change with Harley, like I said, we don't have a Joker. We kind of get that tease at the end of the first season that we'll be getting him. But I always think of her so closely tied. That was such a bold move, and I liked how they did it. I didn't expect to, but I really enjoyed it. Writing the theme for her, obviously it's an Asian character, and there's no... I don't know how to say. She's not tied to any specific other character's origin. Was that a difficult theme? Was it finding the musical themes for her in that episode challenging?
Yes, very much so. I think every one of them was a challenge, which is, I think, at the same time, probably the funnest part about scoring anything Batman related is dealing with the villains, because there's such a glorious, diverse gallery of villains in the Batman universe. So Harley Quinn was an interesting one in the sense that we wanted it to feel a little bit Asian, but not too on the nose, because we didn't want to make that to be a big point. That, this is why it was just this. It just happened to be that way. But at the same time, the concept was, what if we take like actual Harlequin Chester music, something that you would hear in a court in front of a king when they're doing the jokes, and then slow that way down and twist it. And that's kind of the idea. So I took this broken, what's it called? It's I think a guzheng or something. It's a Chinese like hammered instrument. detuned it, and then played the melody with that. At the same time, a violin kind of doing, that same Harley Quinn type theme, but really slow and slightly out of tune. So the whole thing is sour from the beginning. But if you play it fast, you have like a circus, like monkeys, whatever. That's what it would feel like, but it doesn't. It's just really slow and off kilter, and I think that was perfect because it did everything it needed to for the character. It justified her outfit musically, but it also made her extremely deranged, and I think that's the juxtaposition that you needed.
Yeah, I'd say that's what really I liked about that episode is because it was very creepy. When we see her underground lair and she's got all the people in the basement locked up who she's been, helping or trying to get over their psychosis is, but psychoses? What's the plural of psychosis? Am I right? Psychoses? Okay, we'll go with that. I'm not going to count that as a strike. I'm still got one left, folks, if you're kind of keeping track at home. It was just such a creepy, like chill-inducing episode. I think for subverting my expectations, I think that one ended up being one of my favorite of the 10. I think it was really cool. And then I got to say, I love Clayface. That whole thing, the Basil Carlo, and that was another one that was really kind of almost a nod to the old monster movies, the really old ones.
It was
100%.
Actually.
I'm so glad you point that out.
Yeah, it was a callback to the original Clayface from the comics of the 40s.
Yeah. So that's what you went with musically there.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is exactly when I was talking about the Mystery of the Wax Museum, which was one of the first movies that used color. And it was not real color. It was some kind of a weird chemical trick that they did to the film to make it colorful. So the whole thing looks green. Have you ever noticed that? Like these first color movies from Warner Brothers, they have a green vibe, the whole thing. And it's because they couldn't do real color. They only could do some, I don't know the technical specifications of what they did, but if you look at some of the scenes in that episode, the Clayface episode, you see suddenly like green backgrounds all of a sudden. And that's exactly what that is supposed to be, is to get that tone from those, early 1930s monster movies. And the score that's exactly what the score had to be. It was a 1930s horror movie with a little bit of Batman in it. It's awesome. This is awesome.
We have, Dan Reba said it's called Two-Strip Technicolor.
There we go. That's some experts listening. That's excellent.
Right. And hello also to My Flock. Hello. Thanks for listening tonight. Hunter Iggy. Hello to you, sir. And we've got Zachary Nathanson also in the chats. Zachary says Cape Crusader was very interesting. He loved it too. I'm trying to... What got me really was the way each episode tonally, the music... I'm trying to think of the right way to say it because my thoughts are scattered and I want to get my last strike of the night. It was, each one felt like it was almost a unique composition unto itself. So when you're doing the music, obviously I have rudimentary understanding of how this is done. There's an overall, the music for the show, but then there's different themes within each one. Which episode did you find the most challenging and why?
I think one that was tricky was the onomatopoeia one, because we talked about what if we give those Gotham gangsters their own thing and we make it a little bit more percussive and do some finger snaps, almost like West Side Story or something like that. That was kind of the idea. And at first we were struggling with, does it make it comedic? Does it give it some lightness that we don't want? So we had to find that particular balance that seemed to make sense. And I think we ended up finding it pretty well. It's probably the most jazzy episode. Mm-hmm. There's even like a very sultry muted flugelhorn solo at the very end when everything wraps up on Barbara Gordon, which I still love absolutely at that moment. I'm glad we went through several versions of that bit and we ended up using the jazz, and I'm like, yes, thank you.
I'm sure Kevin Smith was quite happy that Onomatopoeia made it, since that's his baby from Green Arrow.
Yeah, exactly.
He was thrilled to see that come in.
Yeah. And we, it had more drum kit stuff, like the sort of jazzy stuff during the action, and that was a trickier one to find, because to me that episode stands out a little bit from the others sonically, so probably the most challenging. But with such great people at the helm of this, they have such good visions. It doesn't really take a whole lot to figure it out. They
Yeah.
know what they want, and they are very good at articulating it. And
Yeah, when you
I
get
get
someone
it,
with a
so-
pedigree like Bruce Timm and James
Yeah.
Tucker working on a show, I mean, that's
Yeah, what can go wrong?
Rick, did you have a favorite episode?
Favorite episode, probably the last episode.
Okay.
Because there were so many surprises in it for me. The death of, I'm
Yeah.
not going to say it.
We won't spoil the death.
And that
Because-
last little 15 seconds, I didn't expect that at all.
Yeah.
And I love it when I'm surprised. It just, it was great.
Yeah, that was one of the off-putting things. One of the things I was kind of like throughout the whole series wrestling with, because the Alfred and Batman dynamic wasn't what I was used to at all. Him calling him Pennyworth and being very cold. And that's one of the things that the whole series, I'm kind of like, ugh, it was
Make it
uncomfortable
stop.
watching that, because I'm so used to him being a father figure and raising Bruce.
Yeah.
And you see it in, not only in the original animated series, but in all the movies, we see
Yeah.
that relationship. And that's what it took me the longest time. And then you kind of get that button at the end where it's kind of coming around, but it still is. So if I had my biggest complaint, that was it. It's like I missed that fatherly aspect.
Yeah. Well, your complaint is exactly what we wanted to do.
Okay.
So mission accomplished. That,
Yeah.
that was the idea.
I mean,
that they
it was-
start off this way, but then they become this entity.
Yeah.
And this is in par with, I think, Batman's arc in this in general. Like I said earlier, he's not the supervillain yet.
Right.
Superhero. Sorry. He gets there, and I think this goes with everything that's associated with him. Even his associates. He doesn't have any allies in the beginning, but he
Yeah.
slowly finds them. He finds the people that are not corrupt, and those he forms these liaisons with. And I think that's kind of the nice thing about this. It's you don't really know where this relationship's going to go until it does, and then
Yeah.
I think that's fun.
Yeah. You were.
No, Bruce Batman had a story arc there.
Yeah.
And that was it. That slight softening of his character, not very much, but slight. And I'm sure there were a lot of people off put by that, but they paid it off in that last episode. So
Yeah, and I don't want people to think, so for anyone out there who says, well, why is James complaining so much? Please believe me,
no.
I love the series. I'm not complaining. But the other thing that kind of didn't sit well with me is when we think of Harvey Dent, he was like right there, the triumvirate of Batman, Gordon, and Dent were the ones trying to clean the city up. Even in the comic books, it was kind of all the thing. And that Harvey was kind of slimy all throughout the thing. It's like, he's playing the both sides of the fence. He's not that solid good guy. That threw me off too, because I was like, when he got acid in the face, I was like, you had it coming, buddy. And I didn't want, that's not the reaction I'm used to when something like that happens to one of the characters. Was that also kind of purposely done to kind of subvert expectations for the end of the series?
I assume so. I don't know what the long-term, what the discussions were about this. This is way before I started anything, but I'm assuming that just the idea was how do we take this character and change it to a point where it's still interesting? And to me, if you didn't expect it, I think that's a mission accomplished again, because
if you go back and read the early Two-Face stories in the 40s, he was called Handsome Harvey Dent, and he was very, very vain and very into himself.
Well, there you go.
You're talking like the early ones, like Batman issue 66, when all the early... Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And he was, not really a nice guy. He was kind of into himself and cared as much about himself as he did justice. And, so...
Sounds like our Harvey Dent to me.
Yeah. And the fact that he was so handsome, whenever he got the acid in his face, that made him go over the edge even quicker because he put a lot of stock in his looks.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm used to, from the late 70s, early 80s when I started reading the comic books and started picking them up. Like my first Two-Face story was the one where he kidnaps the twins. It's right when Tim Drake makes his appearance. So Batman 440, I think, that's about when I started reading. And I'd go back on the issues, but he was married and he was, a stalwart champion. So I guess going that far back, I guess that's kind of, again, them reaching back to keep that whole thing with Batman, the 1940s style and everything like that.
Yeah, they have the whole history of the character to pull from.
Yeah.
And that's been one of their strengths throughout, beginning with the animated series. They took the entire history of the character and kept the stuff that was good and threw out the stuff that didn't work, and put it all together and made a nice package.
Another thing I did not expect was them to bring in Firebug, and this is not a huge spoiler because it doesn't ruin a big thing of the story, but they killed Firebug, and I was like, oh my gosh, I did not see that coming. But that was I'm curious with that episode. There's always themes with music and everything. That one's a lot of fire, a lot of burning. So what was the thought process in your head for constructing the music for that episode?
So Firebug was very childlike in his persona. He was short in the way he talked, and he was kind of talking about this fire like this amazing, like a kid looking at a fire truck, like in awe. This is like, wow, this is so fun. So the child aspect of him we wanted to bring out in the music. So I recorded this amazing singer, Emily J, who, with several versions of overdubbing herself, she created this what almost sounded like a creepy children's choir singing this melody that I wrote that sounds like something a child can hum or sing. It's very simple and juvenile. Mm-hmm. It sounds like a children's nursery rhyme or something. And that became the Firebug theme. So you have this sort of creepy children singing thing with this distorted strings going over it, and it created this really strange juxtaposition of darkness and innocence, which was, I think, really it really fit well for this character. But when we get to his POV, when he's spraying the fire on all these buildings, when he has this sort of moment of, and he's internalizing his desires, you see the burning building and the people running, burning away. He's like looking all in ecstasy. This is amazing, and we're all horrified, right?
Right.
Holy, what is he? These people burning children. What's going on? And he's like, oh my God, this is the best. And that's when the music is completely turned around from his point of view, and it's operatic and massive and glorious and still off. Like you sense you're not supposed to be feeling this being as an amazing moment, but his POV is just like, this is my heaven right here. And that's what the music did in that. So it was an interesting dance of back and forth of playing his creepy childlike persona versus his POV of this is his ultimate ecstasy moment when he sprays the fire and stuff.
Yeah, just each episode, there's so many great moments from each episode. And I've always said, I think I've said this with you on the show before, that if you take the best movies and you turn down the volume so you can't hear music at certain levels, it diminishes what you're seeing so much, and that the music adds so much to it. And it did with this particular series. And if you're just now listening, we're talking with the composer from Batman Caped Crusader. I'm losing hope that Peter's going to join us, but that's okay because we've still got a lot to talk about. We're going to take a real brief commercial break again, and we'll come right back. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS. Please stand by.
Station sold separately from Lego Systems.
Pound Puppy, you're my one and only puppy love.
You can show your Pound Puppy how much you love him with snuggly Pound Puppy outfits.
Into your hooded on t-shirt. We're going biking. Snap your pop's jazzy jacket.
Pound Puppies and outfits, each sold separately.
Whoa! Now let's walk to the park. Uh-oh, thunder. Put on your dry doggy rain gear and you'll stay dry as a bone.
Hooded Hound t-shirt, dry doggy rain gear, Pup's jazzy jacket, and Pound Puppies all sold separately. From town.
Max Steel Robo Force!
Hunter the Conqueror is about to attack Max Steel the Leader. Wrecker the Demolisher to the rescue.
Ideal's new Robo-Force. Warrior robots with gripper bases and crusher arms, each sold separately.
Hundred's escaping.
Okay in there?
Okay, Dad. But we won't be safe till we're rid of Hundred.
Hundred the Conqueror, Max Steel the Leader, Wrecker the Demolisher, each sold separately. New from Ideal's Robo-Force.
Long ago at Rose Petal Place, Orchid met Nastina, the evil spider. Dolls sold separately.
Oh, no, Orchid. It's not. Rose Petal. Watch out, Nastina. The sky is falling. I won't fall for that. Gotcha. That'll keep her in her place.
Rose Petal, Nastina, and Orchid dolls come with all you see here, each sold separately. New from Canada. Seaweed's Tropicals. It's Kenner's Seaweed's Tropicals. Camille, Baby Cascade, and Pelly Pelican.
Hey, this is Phil Lamar.
Hermes Conrad.
the samurai known as Jack. And you're listening to Geek to Me Radio.
Bill Lamar, just one of the many guests, will be attending Two Rivers Comic Con. That's May 23rd through the 25th, right here in St. Louis, right in the historic district of St. Charles. He'll be at the Foundry right there. Tickets for that for the event itself, the website will go live, I believe, September 1st. So check out the number 2 riverscomiccon.com to get your tickets for that starting September the 1st. We've already announced Rick Burchett as our featured artist. We've got Susan Eisenberg, the voice of Wonder Woman, will be there. Phil Lamar, Samurai Jack, and obviously Green Lantern, and some other guests who we will be announcing soon. So make sure you follow Two Rivers Comic Con on social media so you can keep up with all that. And I want to make sure we tell you about our official comic book sponsor, Bugs Comics and Games. If you are loving what we're talking about here and you want to go out and pick up some Batman comics, go over to Bugs Comics and Games right there, easily accessible from either Highway 70 or from 364. He's on Bryan Road out there in O'Fallon. I just chatted with him today. He was set up at the Toyman Toy Show, and he's got the new comics. If you're looking for back issues, he's got those, because I always say it's not a real comic book store if they don't have back issues. So you've got boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff you can go through from Silver Age, Bronze Age, Modern Age. He's got some pricier stuff in the case if you're looking for that key for your collection. If you want that Grail comic, ask him. He might have it. And also follow him on Instagram. He's been putting books up there. And if you're outside the greater St. Louis, St. Charles area, go to Instagram.com, look up Bugs Comics and AND Games. And you see something you like on there, just type claim. He'll send you a PayPal invoice. You pay it, and he ships it right to your door securely. He can be your local comic book store no matter where you are in the country, in the world, really. He does worldwide shipping. The post office will handle that for him. But if you get the chance, I definitely recommend going over there. If you do, join the Avengers Club. That way you start saving money on your new issues, your back issues, your bags, your boards, your toys, your games, with your cards, collectibles, whatever it is you might be wanting. You might as well save a little bit of money in this economy. So join the Avengers Club and tell them you heard about it on Geek to Me Radio. Very proud to have Bugs Comics and Games as the official comic book sponsor here on Geek to Me Radio. We've got just a little bit of time left. We're talking with the composer of Batman Cape Crusader, Freddie Wiedman, and we've got Rick Burchett in studio with us as well, coming down to the wire here at the end of the hour. What was the most fun for you? Because obviously you played in the DC sandbox before. You've done so many great projects, but I can only imagine, like you said, you swung for the fences, but that kind of makes the reward higher as well when you're doing something this grandiose. But there had to have been that moment for you, Freddie, when you're like, this is so amazing. Whether a certain theme you wrote, a song you wrote, a moment you had with Bruce and James when you're working on it. What was the highlight of this project for you?
There were so many. I mean, just the sheer fact that I got to compose this was just, I have to constantly pinch myself that they picked me, because it's so hard to get to these kind of shows as a composer, and the universe decided it was my turn. But I think there was the two big things were I think the main title that we already kind of talked about, but that was one of those where I was like, okay, I'm in a position right now in my studio where I get to write a Batman theme song. I mean, that doesn't happen a lot, I think, in anybody's career. So being able to do, it's different. The DC movies I had done, they were mostly like, yes, there were some Batman-centric ones like Son of Batman and Batman versus Robin and those things, but this was part of a bigger arc with Justice League, so I wouldn't call it too Batman-focused overall. And this was different. This was like I had to write a Batman theme, and I don't know if you know this, but I also composed the music for Beware the Batman.
Yes.
That show that came out, 10, 11 years ago.
Oh, please tell me it hasn't
nobody
been that long.
saw.
Ouch.
For some reason. Yeah, I still think it's a fun show too. It just didn't air at good times. I think that was the biggest issue. But
I can't
anyway,
believe it's been that long ago. Now I feel, oh my gosh. I feel
yeah,
like that was.
But it's finding some audiences, and it's getting a lot of love actually on streaming platforms now.
Yeah, it's on
So
HBO Max, because I came across it the other day when I was streaming. I was like, oh, how cool.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love about streamers, is that these projects that you thought were dead, they suddenly get a second life and a third life, and you're like, oh wow, now it's in the top 10 on a 10-year-old show. Like,
You never know, right?
Yeah, just never know. But anyway, and for that show, while I was, equally excited to be scoring a Batman show, I didn't get to do the theme song because they used there was a band, an artist that they used for that. And I was like, that would have been a fun one. So when this one came around, they were like, we want you to take a stab at the theme song. I was like, okay, this is it. This is what I'm going to do now. So I think that was probably the most fun and exciting moment, was to be able to do that. And then I think I was really excited personally to be writing a noir 1930s film score like that. I idolized those composers and those scores from back then so much. And that some of the first CDs that I bought when I was a kid and a soundtrack fanatic, just like you guys, those were the things that I listened to. Early Korngold, Dr. Zhivago, Gone with the Wind, you name it. All this Bernard Herrmann stuff. It was just, that's the stuff that I sort of grew up with as my first couple of film scores. So now getting the chance to do something with that musical language was really a fun thing for me, and I'm so excited to do it again, because it was really a fun experience, and it's really pushed me outside my comfort zone, which sounds always scary, but it's actually something that I really like because it keeps my job interesting. I don't like to do too much of the same all the time, so any new challenge is always massively welcome, and thankfully filmmakers always look for fresh and new things, so that helps. But that's probably the other highlight for me, is to get under the hood of this type of music and really figure out a way to marry that to the idea of Batman and figure that out. It was a bit of a riddle, but an exciting one. Yeah.
And I got renewed for a second season, so I'm assuming you're attached for that one as well, yes?
Yeah, I mean, I always say I'm officially on when I'm done.
Okay.
So I'll keep that party line for now until I score episode 20, and then I'll tell you if I'm on.
Did you have any as we're coming up to the end of the hour here, Rick, any final thoughts or anything you wanted to ask Freddie at all? Or?
I'm in awe of what he did. I think it's wonderful. I've been waiting for a Batman like this for a long time, and to finally get it is great for this old Batman fan.
And was everything you expected for this kind of this type of show?
It was better than I expected.
Oh wow!
I heard what Bruce had said early on. And there was that that little kerfuffle at the beginning when it was going to be on Max, and then Max dropped it supposedly, and then it ended up on Prime, and so you didn't know what was lost during that thing, and you never know. You really never know, and you just keep your fingers crossed, and in this case, it delivered big time.
Yeah, and the obviously, as we've talked about, the music being such a huge part of that. I know you also worked on Batman Gotham by Gaslight, which is an opposite end of the spectrum, because you're going in the Victorian times and everything. I guess that's technically Edwardian era. Would have been Edwardian.
It's Victorian, Victorian, I think.
Okay, so that's another. We won't count that as a strike either. I was close, where they kind of butt up against each other, Edwardian and Victorian. Yeah. But again, it's such a departure doing a project like that, the music, and then coming, fast forwarding into the 1940s. But just it. Like I said, the music from every single person I've talked to, and I'm not just saying this because I've got you on my show, every single person I've talked to has said, boy, the music was so good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good to hear. Thank you. Yeah, it's hard work and it's a labor of love. I think hopefully that it showed, because we all care deeply about this project. I think everybody that worked on it, start to finish, is so personally tied to this and wanted this to be good for the fans and for everybody. And also for the next generation of Batman fans. I mean, I think that's the other thing is, doing fan service is one thing, and it's extremely important because, at the end of the day, we're making this for the fans, for people that love Batman.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm really hoping that some new audiences and younger audiences will find this as exciting as all-time fans, so to speak, and hopefully jump on the Batman bandwagon with this show. You never know, but.
Yeah, it's always, hopefully it'll be. Didn't think about that in that term because I've been around so long. But this Batman will be someone's first introduction to Batman. That's such a cool thing to think about.
Yep,
it'll be somebody's B-task, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's darker, and I hope this doesn't scare people off, but I don't think it's too dark. I think it's still within. I mean, like my daughter, and my kids, they're right at the perfect age to enjoy it, which is great. They're like between 10 and 13, so If that's your intro to Batman, I think it could be a good starting point.
Absolutely.
Because it does rewind and start off, and you find out about the backstory and how it started, and that creepy moment when young Bruce is standing in the doorway in the middle of the night telling Alfred what's going to happen next.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's such emotional, the layers on this too, with all the stuff into the flashbacks.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed Fat
amazing
Alfred.
job.
Now, kind of like Fat Amy from Pitch Perfect, I just kept calling him Fat Alfred because it looked like Alfred Beagle from the comic books.
That's the way Alfred started.
Yeah.
In the 40s, he was heavy.
Right. So I didn't mind that at all either. But just overall, we've got just a couple minutes left. This hour flies by. I always think we need 2 hours. So Freddie, if people want to find out more about you, keep up with you online, check out your other projects, website, social media handles, things like that.
My website is purely like informational for like, this is the projects and there's a contact form, but I wouldn't go there. I think the easiest way if you want to get in touch with me in any shape or form, it would be either through social media, like Instagram. My Instagram is public. It's at Freddie Wiedman. Same for Twitter, same handle at Freddie Wiedman. So those are the two places. I'm there all the time. I always say you can ask me anything.
And I did, because as soon as you tweeted out something like 6 months ago, you messaged back and said, well, we can't talk about it now, but later on. So I'm so glad we had the opportunity. It's like I said, we need to not wait another, 4 years in between our conversations. But thanks for taking the time out on a Sunday. And for those of you listening after the fact in the social media form, scroll down to the bottom of the web page and we'll have the links to Freddie's social media right there. You can click on there and follow him on socials. Freddie Wiedman, I appreciate your time so much. Continued success, and we'll have you back on for season 2.
Thank you so much. I can't wait.
Thanks so much. We appreciate it. There he goes. Rick, people want to keep up with you. We follow each other on Twitter, but I never see you posting much. Do you not do much on social media?
I don't post. If I had something to post, I would post. But I really don't have anything. I could post that, hey, I drank a glass of tea today, but I don't think people will be too interested.
People like it when you spill the tea on social media, so you never know. That's one.
I know. No, I don't have anything going on.
Okay.
Right now.
Well, we do want to make sure that all of you listening send all your positive energy, prayers, vibes, whatever it is, Rick's way. He is undergoing surgery. I hope it's okay. I said that out loud.
Sure.
But just so it's just send good vibes his way, and that way we can get you back in the saddle real quick here, hopefully.
Okay. Yeah. Friday, I'm going to be getting a new spine made of titanium.
He can go one-on-one. He saw Deadpool versus Wolverine. He wanted the same setup that Wolverine had.
That's right.
So they're going to have the claws and all. It's a little extra for the claws. But we wish you all the best, and we'll be pulling for you every step of the way, and hopefully we can get you back in studio soon with us.
Yeah, well, I'll bring my wheelchair in, and
we've got a ramp, but we'll get you in. That's fine. So, Rick, I do appreciate you coming into the studio. It's always great to have you in with me, especially when we're talking Batman stuff. So I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And for those of you listening, I want to remind you all, check out the Justice League Revisited podcast, brand new podcast that Susan Eisenberg, the voice of Wonder Woman, she and I do this. We go through episodically and break down each episode of Justice League, the animated series, in its original airing order. And you can check that out wherever you get your podcast from. If you're a fan of the Justice League animated series, it's a great way to kind of have a little companion. Maybe we'll show it to you in a way that you've never seen before. We've had lots of guests on. Phil Lamar, Dan Reba, who's in the chats, has joined us several times. He's basically our unofficial co-host on that because we tap him so much to get the good information. Stan Berkowitz has joined us. We've had Glenn Murakami joining us, talking about the art. So there's always something that I learned. So hopefully it's informative for you. And again, make sure you put Two Rivers Comic Con on your calendar, May 23rd through the 25th of 2025. Brand new con coming to historic Main Street area of St. Charles. We'll be at the Foundry and the Steel Shop. A lot of cool comic book people will be there. We're bringing in writers, artists, and we're also going to have some voice actors and people of that ilk there as well. So if you're a comic book nerd like me, you'll definitely want to check that out. That's going to do it. As we wrap up the show here, I'm going to play the outro music so that we are moving out. My thanks, as always, to Joey V. I'm going to grab them both, Joey, because I never remember which one. So there's Joey. And my executive producer wouldn't be doing the show without him all himself. Is that my third strike? We'll settle up afterwards. So thank you to all of you in the chat. Thank you all for listening. It's not in the way you watch I sound me. Until then.
It's not in the way you watch The Flash. It's not in the way you love Scotty Young art. It's not in the way you play Mario Kart. It's not in the way you look
tonight.
From ABC News, I'm Chuck Severson. The Kamala Harris campaign.
Stop it. Stop it.
He's proud of having a hand in overturning Roe v. Wade. Bans earlier
today. Okay. Trump